Good to see y'all. David, good to see you. And if anybody else that hasn't been here in a while, it's good to see you too. So I am really excited today. I'm a little bit like a kid, as y'all know, but I got a new Bible. And I actually had a new Bible, but it's 11-point font, and I found a 12-point font. Because you can't, if you put peepers on, you don't look cool teaching. And that's really the sole purpose of why I'm up here, is to look cool. So anyway, I heard somebody say you don't look, keep trying or something. What was that? Wait, like you're wearing a hook 'em horn shirt and you're talking about looking cool. You don't know anything about looking cool. All right, the first words on my notes said, "Did evil in the sight of the Lord," and it just, you speak up. All right. Okay, we are in the book of Judges. We're on the 12th judge, which I believe is the 12th judge, Samson, although different people count different ways, and Samson is covered in more scripture in the book of Judges than any of the other judges. And as I talked about last week, it is not, we think of him and we think of the story as a story of strength, a powerful person, but the real story is a story of weakness. It's a story of a man that's called and continues to fail over and over and over. It's a story of someone who is consecrated to God and doesn't honor his commitment or his calling all the way through. And so last week, the notes that say, "Did evil in the sight of the Lord," Israel is starting its cycle that happens over and over and over. They do evil in the sight of the Lord, and all of a sudden God sends an oppressor in. The oppressor takes over, and they cry out to God as part of the third piece of the cycle of sin. In some cases they repent, some cases they don't, and God will send a deliverer. Samson is the deliverer, but Israel has done evil in the sight of the Lord, and they are in the captivity of the Philistines for 40 years, the longest period of time for 40 years. There's a man named Manoah and his wife, and the angel of the Lord appeared not last week, but in the scriptures last week, and came to his wife, Manoah's wife, and said, "You're barren, but you're going to have a son. And he is going to be a Nazirite," meaning he is going to be separated to God. In Numbers, if you go to slide 4, Numbers 6 in 12-point font, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, 'Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when either a man or a woman makes a special vow, the vow of a Nazirite, to separate himself to the Lord.'" Samson's calling is to be separated to the Lord from birth. "He shall separate himself from wine and strong drink," no drinking, "no vinegar from wine or strong drink, and he shall not drink any juice of grapes or eat fresh or dried. All the days of his separation he shall eat nothing that is produced by the grapevine, not even the seeds or the skin." He's basically saying, stay away from the vineyard, stay away from grapes. "All the days of his vow, separation, no razor shall touch his head until the time is completed, which he separates himself for the Lord, for he shall be holy." His calling, Samson's calling, is to be holy from birth. "He shall let the locks of his head grow long, and the day he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. Not even for his mother or his father or brother or sister, if they die, shall he make himself unclean, because his separation to God is on his head. All the days of his separation, he is to be holy to the Lord." The Nazirite calling was to be holy to God, and according to the Mishnah and the rabbis and the rabbinical theologians, it was to be for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, or 100 days, a defined set of time. And we know that Paul set himself aside. There are those that believe John the Baptist was a Nazirite for a period of time. Samson was different. Samson was called from the womb to be a Nazirite all the days of his life. But yet they were in captivity to the Jews. Look at the map on slide 5. I want you to know exactly where the Philistines are. You'll see on the left, down in the bottom, you'll see Gaza. That is modern-day Gaza. And right in between Gaza and Ashkelon is where the modern-day Gaza Strip ends. So at this point in time, the Philistines occupy all the way up north, well past Ashdod, up into Gath. We'll see other cities, but the Philistines were the sea people. The Philistines, as I've talked about last week, were not part of the curse of God that came with the Canaanites or the Girgasites or all the other stalagmites. None of them. The Philistines were distinct, and they were called by God and placed here to be a thorn in the side of Israel. They weren't the product of any of the sins, and their creation was simply for God. This was one of two groups that Israel should have come into had they honored God all the days of their lives. They would have had these two groups, the Philistines being one, and they would have conquered them. We'll see later how big Judah is in comparison to the Philistines, but the Philistines are ruling at this point in time. And so with that, Sharon, let's kick off.
Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he came up and he told his father and mother,
Keep going.
I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as a wife. But his father and mother said to him, Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among our people that you must go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. Then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah, and behold, a young lion came toward him, roaring. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. After some days, he returned to take her. And he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. He scraped it out into his hands and went on, eating as he went. And he came to his father and mother and gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion.
In verse 1, Samson goes down to Timnah. Timnah's 4 miles away. He is a Danite. He's from the tribe of Dan, and he goes over into the Philistine territory. Lord knows why he's there. And it says he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines, and he came and told his father, I saw. And the word I saw, see, in Hebrew is emphatic. What he's saying is, I saw her. And like I remember the first time I saw Carolyn, the first time I saw her. There's nothing spiritual about that. Nothing spiritual, but I saw her. And in the first class, somebody said, yeah, but how old were you? And I said, I was 19. And they said, well, that explains everything. And I said, I still see her. I still, when she walks by, I still see her. Well, that's what's going on with Samson. He sees her, and he wants her. And their parents know, right? The angel of the Lord has come to his mother. The angel of the Lord has visited with his father. They know that Samson is to be a Nazirite, separated, consecrated, holy to God from birth. And he says, now get her for me. Get me this Philistine. And they know this is wrong. And they said, is there not a woman from our people that worships God? They were supposed to be totally separate. Deuteronomy 7:3, as Moses is in the mountain and he's looking over at the Holy Land and he's getting a message from God. God is telling him what they're supposed to do when they occupy Israel. And the Lord your God, when the Lord your God brings you into the land that you are entering, take possession of it and clear away the many nations that are before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, the 7 nations that are mightier than you. And when the Lord gives them over to you, you shall defeat them and devote them to complete destruction. You shall make no covenant with them and show no mercy. You shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons or taking their daughters for your sons, for they would turn away your sons from following me to serve other gods. And then the anger of the Lord would be kindled against you, and he would destroy you. The Philistines weren't one of the 7 nations mightier, and these parents, I just have a sense that these parents were crestfallen that their son would want to marry outside. But Manoah's, I think he's saying, it's not one of the 7 nations. So at least it's not one of those 7 nations. So I'm going to compromise. I'm going to help my son get it. And that is a bad plan. Now, God uses this plan. God uses it, but Samson is not being consecrated to God. And this rule, this guidance, is the same for Christians, for all of those of us who have unmarried kids. Paul said, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial, which means lawlessness? What is in common between Christ and lawlessness? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God. We are to be his people. And when we get married, we're supposed to be his people. And when he says being unequally yoked, he's talking about the concept of an ox that might be yoked with a little lamb. And they're supposed to accomplish a purpose. They're supposed to plow ground. For the rest of their lives, they're supposed to plow ground. And an ox and a lamb that are yoked together with the purpose of plowing God's land are just going to go in circles. And so we're not to be, even today, unequally yoked, even if our son or our daughter says, get him for me. Now, this is clear that the Philistines and the Hebrews had something in common, and that is that their parents would organize this. There wasn't a concept of dating. And so when Samson goes to his father, he's going to his father to say, it's your job to go make this happen between her father and you. They know that this is wrong. And they know it because they say that you have to go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines. And he said, get her. She is right in my eyes. That's the whole story of Judges. Every man did what was right in his own eyes, and Samson is chief among them. Then Samson goes down with his father and mother. They're involved. Maybe they're hoping to redirect him, and they come to the vineyards of Timnah. They're not supposed to be around vineyards. And behold, they get separated at this point. The parents are separated from Samson, and behold, a young lion comes toward him roaring. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, although he had nothing in his hand, and he tore the lion in pieces as one who tears a young goat. So I've been to Israel, I've been to the Middle East maybe 80 times, and I've never seen a lion. And if you remember our study of Daniel, lions were prominent in the architecture of the Babylonians. And so I'm like, what happened with lions? Let's go to slide 9. What type of lion did they have? They absolutely had lions up until 1200 AD before they were wiped out. And when we see biblical references to lions, this is the species of lions that they had. These were not little kitties. This is a fierce lion. And so I told you last week, it's my belief that Samson was not jacked up. I don't think he was muscular. I think he was a common man. I believe that when his wife is trying to figure out how he derives his strength later on in the story, that she's looking at him and she's like, what makes you strong? You look like a weakling. Well, how are you so strong? If he was jacked up, like Don, if he was jacked up, she would know. She wouldn't need to try to find out. She would say, you're strong because you're jacked up. Like, so he tears the lion into pieces as one tears a young goat. Now that's an idiom in the Jewish language. You don't tear a young goat apart, but he's just saying that a baby goat is easy to tear apart. And he did not tell his father or mother. He's touched a carcass. He has no idea what's been done. He went down and he talked with the woman, and she was right in his eyes. Hubba hubba is what that means. That's Hebrew for hubba hubba. And after some days, he returns to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of he's not supposed to be around a vineyard. He's not supposed to be around a carcass. And there's a swarm of bees in the body of the lion. I know that seems weird to you, but I talk all the time. It's one of the most amazing things. The trapper at our ranch has trapped about 350 coyotes over the past 3 years. He sends a picture every time so that I know what's been trapped. And in the summer, what you will find is within 2 days, because of heat, because of birds, because of all kinds of things, there's nothing but a skeleton and basically hide over it. And it's totally empty and dry. And so it wouldn't have been crazy for a swarm of bees in several days to go into this carcass and form a beehive. It was probably what's called vulture bees, not honeybees. And he goes into the body of the lion, and he scraped it out in his hands, and he went on eating as he went. He's touching the carcass. He's in the vineyard. And he comes to his father and mother, and he gave them to them, and they ate. And they had no idea. He probably defiled them because he's taken this from a carcass. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. This is the father. He knows that this father, Manoah, if you remember, this father prayed to God, tell us what to do with this boy. Tell us how to raise him. What manner of service he is going to be to you. Tell us how to raise him. And Samson doesn't give him the courtesy of telling him that he's defiled. And he feeds it to him. So in terms of penetrating questions on slide 10, from the story of Samson, we should glean. Samson was consecrated. I'll come back to this, but Samson was consecrated, which means set apart and holy. And from the moment that we accept Jesus Christ, we are consecrated and holy and set apart. We look at this and we hear the story of Samson and we hear Nazarite, and it's a foreign concept to us, but man, every one of us are supposed to be consecrated and holy to God. And so ask yourself, what am I pursuing that pleases me? Am I pursuing what pleases me, or am I pursuing what pleases God? When he looked at her and he said, she is right in my eyes, do you think that had anything to do with God? It did. And by the way, Russell Freeman, when he looked at Caroline, it had nothing to do with God. We eventually got to God. But those first looks were from me, had nothing to do with God. Have I allowed compromise into my calling? Manoah had a calling. He prayed to God, how do I raise them? But when it came to helping him get a wife that was uncircumcised, when he knew the instructions to Moses were to not intermarry, he compromised. And lastly, what am I hiding that could defile others? He gave his honey to the parents, and he didn't tell them that it had come from a dead carcass. All right.
His father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. As soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said to them, let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you shall give me 30 linens of garments and 30 changes of clothes. And they said to him, Put your riddle, that we may hear it. And he said to them, Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. And in 3 days they could not solve the riddle. On the fourth day they said to Samson's wife, Entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us here to impoverish us? And Samson's wife wept over him and said, You only hate me. You do not love me. You have put a riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is. And he said to her, Behold, I have not told my father nor my mother, and shall I tell you? She wept before him for the 7 days that their feast lasted, and on the seventh day he told her, because she pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people. And the men of the city said to him on the seventh day, before the sun went down, What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town and took their spoil and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man.
His father is participating, and he's going down to set up a feast there. And the words in verse 10, feast, is a drinking banquet. That's what that means. It's not just a meal. So he is organizing for the Nazarite's son a drinking banquet, for so the young men used to do. Shouldn't have been this one. There should have been no strong drink. And as soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions. Notice there's no Jews involved in this, because none of the good Jews would condone this unequally yoked union. So they get 30 Philistines. And he comes to him and he says, let me put a riddle to you. This was common. This was, the story of Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. She comes to him, and it says that she asked riddles to him to see if he could solve them. But this is a riddle that can't be solved. This is a riddle he knew. This was a unique, non-common riddle. It is crazy to assume that bees, I had to explain to you that bees actually can form. No one would have ever thought that. This was an out-and-out deception for the purpose of getting 30 garments of clothes, because he was self-absorbed and he wanted to look good. He wanted to be rich. He wanted to have what was important in those days, which is clothes. I'm married to somebody a little like that. And so he says to them, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. How in the world could you solve that? In 3 days, they can't solve the riddle. There's 4 days left on the bed. On the fourth day, he goes to his wife. They go to his wife, and they say, entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, or we're going to burn you and your father's house. We're going to kill you. Theologians, the commentators and the preachers that I'll listen to, almost all of them make fun of her when she starts saying, you only hate me, you do not love me. But man, I don't. They're threatening to burn her to death. And she is doing everything she can to wear him out, and she does. She said, you have put a riddle to my people. She knows these are not God's people. You've put a riddle to my people. And he's a numbskull. He's like, I have not even told my father and mother. Why would I tell you? That's a bad... I didn't take premarital counseling, but I can tell you that's not the way you do it. You don't do that. And she weeps before him for 7 days. And then she told the riddle, and he pressed her hard, and he told her, and then she told the riddle to her people. They clearly have been watching Jeopardy, Because they worded it as a question, what is sweeter than honey and what is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, bad. Again, not in premarital, I think sow may be worse. I think you could probably call your wife a sow. But a heifer's right there, right? I mean, do you ever call your wife a heifer? Ever? Excuse me, do you ever call your previous wife a heifer? And the spirit of we need some 20 years old, because they need to learn this. Don't call your wife a heifer. Have I done that? I haven't done it lately. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed on him. God is working his will in his life. God has a plan for him regardless of this commitment. God made a promise to Manoah that he's going to be separated and he will begin to deliver his people. And his sovereign will, God's sovereign will, is going to be done regardless of what Samson does. God's sovereign will be done. He goes down to Ashkelon, 23 miles away. Ashkelon's a modern city. And he strikes down 30 men of the town, and he takes their dirty garments and comes and slings them on the floor at these 30 guys. And in hot anger, he goes back to his father's house. And Samson's wife, so this is the same as the Jews. So once you're betrothed, before you consummate the marriage, you're considered a wife. Mary was Joseph's wife, even though they had not had their official wedding ceremony. So between the Philistines and the Jews, it's the same thing. She's his wife, she's betrothed to him, and he's not slept with her yet. And so even though she's considered married, her father believes that Samson's left, and Samson has left. So he gives him to his best companion. Slide 13. So as we look at the rest of Judges 14, calling doesn't cancel character. Even though he was divinely called, he should have had character. We're divinely called, and we should do everything. In Philippians 1:27, let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel of Christ. And our strength is meant for service, not for self. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received for others. Influence can flow from imperfect vessels. Our flaws do not limit God's sovereignty. They highlight it. We have this treasure in jars of clay to show this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. All right, Sharon.
After some days, at the time of wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. Thank you. And he said, I will go into my wife in the chamber. But her father would not allow him to go in. And her father said, I really thought that you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead. And Samson said to them, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm. So Samson went and caught 300 foxes and took torches, and he turned them tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. And when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and set fire to the stacked grain and the standing grain, as well as the olive orchards. Then the Philistines said, who has done this? And they said, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. And Samson said to them, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit. And he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow, and he went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock at Edom.
After some days, at the time of harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. I will go into my wife in the chamber. What that means This is a really PG-13 lesson. But what that means is he's going to fellowship with her. And his way of fellowshipping is to begin with a goat. And what man wouldn't try that? I mean, Don, have you ever gone in with a goat? There's still time. You should. I'm going to go in with, I know my wife, and I'm fairly confident a young goat's not going to help me. I'll go into my wife with the chamber, his father, but her father stops him. And he's like, I thought you hated her because you flew out of here. You flew out of here, so I gave her to your best man. By the way, is not her younger sister even more beautiful? But Samson had none of that. He said, this time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm. And so he goes and catches 300 foxes. Now, this word, I find this amazing. That first of all, foxes they tend to be loners. You see a single fox, but this word in Hebrew is actually jackal. Go to slide 15. You're getting all kinds of animal husbandry kind of lessons today. So these jackals are jackals in Israel, and they hunt in packs. And so Samson, now the rendering on the right is not an actual picture. That is a cartoon, obviously. But he would have, in the story, he tied their tails together, not just, he would have gotten a rope and tied those tails together, and he would have tied a torch on them and let them go. And so they burn all the standing grain and all the stacked grain. And the Philistines come, and they're like, who's done this? And they said, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because they considered them, even though they're betrothed, they considered them married. And they said, because he has taken a wife, because he, the father-in-law, has taken his wife and given it to his best man. And so the Philistines did what she had tried to avoid all the time. They burned her. They burned her, and they burned her house down because they're abhorrent people. And Samson said to them, if this is what you do, I swear. And when it says, I will be avenged on you, it means I'm going to get revenge. I swear I'm going to get revenge. And then after that, after I get total revenge, then I'll quit. After I get everything I want. And it says that he struck them, another idiom, hip and thigh, with a great blow, and he went down and stayed in the cleft of a rock in Edom. Go to slide 16. This is modern-day Edom, and he has basically killed these people, and so he's now not even gone to his parents' house. He's hiding in a cave. So slide 17. As we look at him and we put ourselves in his shoes, do we respond to betrayal with vengeance, or do we surrender it to God? And how do we respond to God's plan? How do I respond when God's plan unfolds through pain? Because his purposes are sometimes accomplished from personal loss. All right.
Then the Philistines came up and encamped in Judah and made a raid on Lehi. And the men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? They said, we have come up to bind Samson, to do to him as he did to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Edom and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is this that you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. And they said to him, we have come down to bind you, that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines. And Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. They said to him, no, we will only bind you and give you into their hands. We will surely not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and the ropes that were on his arms became as flax that has caught fire, and his bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, and put out his hand and took it, and with it he struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men. As soon as he had finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and that place was called Ramath-Lehi. And he was very thirsty, and he called upon the Lord and said, you have granted this great salvation by the hand of the servant, and shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? And God split up open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water came out from it. And when he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore, the name of it was called En-Hakkore. It is at Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years.
So the Philistines, let's go to the map. So the Philistines, you can see Judah to the right, and Simeon's in the middle. By the way, Simeon was totally absorbed into Judah, and because of an earlier curse, they kind of disappeared and were subsumed into Judah. But you see how big Judah is, and their mission and calling should have been to take over the Philistines, but they weren't able to do it. And so the Philistines come over, and they're looking for Samson, and the people of Judah, after a raid, said, why are you coming after us? And they said, we've come to get Samson to do to him what he did to us. And so 3,000 of these men go to Samson, and they said, do you not realize that these are our rulers? Rather than conquering the Philistines, they're going to Samson, 3,000. Rather than taking up arms as God's people, they're going and they're saying, do you realize these are our rulers? And the Philistines rule over us. What have you done? And Samson said, as they did to me, I did to them. They asked for it. And they said, well, we've come down to bind you so that we can give you to the Philistines. Just like the Jews gave Jesus over. One of God's people, God's person, is being used to conquer the Philistines, and they hand him over. They tie him with new ropes, and they make a special point to say they tied him with new ropes because they were stronger. But God's sovereign purpose was to make sure that he attacked the Philistines, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and those ropes, just like they were burning, fell off of him. And he looked down, and he sees the fresh jawbone, something not dried out, of a donkey. So if you wonder what I wondered what a jawbone of a donkey looks like. Slide 21. There you go. So he picks up one of those, which he's not supposed to touch, and he strikes 1,000 men. You remember the chart that I have of the judges, and the second judge is Shamgar. And there's one sentence about Shamgar. Shamgar took an ox goad, and he slew 600 Philistines. Well, Samson takes the jawbone of a donkey, the Spirit of God. This is hyper important. Again, it's not that he's strong. It's not that he is buff. It's not that he is a super fighter. It is the Spirit of God accomplishing his sovereign purpose in Samson's life. And Samson, with the jawbone of a donkey, the word donkey is ka-mor. Heaps upon heaps is ko-mer. So he's playing a word game, and he says the jawbone of a ka-mor, ko-mor upon ko-mor. With the jawbone of a donkey, I've struck down 1,000 men. And as soon as he finished speaking, he threw the jawbone down, and that place was called Jawbone Hill. That's what that means. And he was very thirsty, and for the first time in the story of Samson, he calls out to God. For the first time, when he's thirsty after he's looked, he didn't pray for a woman. He didn't pray that he would be holy. He didn't pray for his parents as he was defiling them. He hadn't prayed. But for the first time, when he is thirsty, he goes to God, and he says, you're the one that granted this. You're the one that was working in my life. And he actually gives God the credit. It's, you have granted this salvation by your servant. And now I'm supposed to die? And God splits open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water comes out. And he drank, and his spirits returned, and he revived. And therefore, the name of it was called, in English, the Fountain of One Calling. It is at Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. For the first time, we've heard nothing about Samson having people that follow him. We've had no conversation about him being around other Jews other than his parents, who he's duping and forcing into this unsanctimonious actions that he has taken. He's a loner until now, but God worked through him and put him into a position to be a deliverer, and he ruled and judged Israel for 20 years. Slide 22, in terms of the takeaways, God can use conflict to awaken his people. And so Samson's revenge escalated into a national confrontation. Proverbs 16:4 says, the Lord works out everything to its proper end. And desperation can lead to a deeper independence. He was physically exhausted. It took being physically exhausted before he turned to God. And 2 Corinthians 12:9 is so great for us, because we know that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord. But at times we have to realize that God's grace, that Christ is saying, my grace is sufficient for you. And God honors the cry of the consecrated, and this is really important. Again, as I've said this, from the moment you ask Christ into your heart, you're consecrated. You're set apart. You are no different than Samson, who from birth was to be set apart and holy to God and consecrated. From the moment we ask Christ into our heart, we're consecrated. And for the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. That's irrevocable to you. And so we should live in a way that brings glory to God, to call on him, and to live consecrated lives. And that is the biggest takeaway from Samson. Any thoughts or questions? All right. Thank you.